I also recognize some of your names, which makes me happy. And then we have Sean McKay with Mid-Ohio Food Collective on here as well. He has been one of our partners in kind of building the grant and like giving me advice and stuff like that. And then my name is Annabelle Spranger. I'm an urban conservation specialist here at Franklin Soil and Water Conservation District, and I'll be administering this grant program. So we're going to go through some intros, which I just did. We'll do a little bit of background on the grant, the purpose, and kind of the spirit of the grant, I've been calling it. Um, we'll go over some eligibility requirements for both organizations and then things that you can fund with this grant program. Um, we will go over the application a little bit, scoring, grant review, and then I'll give you guys some time to ask any questions or discussions and stuff like that. Um, we do have two people on the call who have received the grant, so if you have questions about their experiences with it too, don't want to put anybody on the spot, but we do have some people there. If I can't answer a question, if I don't have the answer off the top of my head, or that's something I haven't thought about before, um, we can I can either get with you individually, I'll put ways to contact us at the end of this, and then any questions people do have, I will add to the frequently asked questions that are on our webpage for the Urban Ag Grant. Um, these intros are not accurate actually, because anyway, um, one of our key people who will be working on the grant too is Karima Samadi, who many of you may know was City of Columbus Public Health. Um, the City of Columbus and Franklin County Economic Planning and Development have been super instrumental in getting this grant off the ground. Um, real quick, it looks like you guys all have yourself muted, but if you do have questions, um, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat, and then, like I said, Madison will be monitoring that. So this grant builds on some of the efforts of the Columbus and Franklin County Local Food Action Plan. And this grant is funded using federal ARPA funding, which is American Rescue Plan Act funding. This was allocated by the Franklin County Board of Commissioners. Um, this grant is also kind of intended to supplement the Columbus Foundation Urban Garden grants. One of the things I've kind of heard from people when I talk about this grant and kind of the funding sources and resources that are available in the county is a lot of the grants are sort of um, catered towards nonprofits. So this one is available to nonprofits and for-profit businesses. Um, one of the things I do tell people is that you can apply for up to $15,000 worth of funding. That's a significant amount of money. If you are looking for soil or just plants or just a couple raised beds, just a couple $1,000s, we may end up pushing you to the Columbus Foundation grant because that is sort of what that's intended for. This one is sort of intended for more larger scale infrastructure things. This is the second year of our grant program. We did have 2024 was the inaugural year. I think Franklin Soil and Water doesn't do a ton of agriculture stuff. We're not really in this space that much in a very public way. So I'm kind of hoping we got the word out a little bit more this year. This ARPA funding that I referenced earlier, like I said, this is COVID relief money for infrastructure, um, is no longer available after this year. So it needed to be allocated by the end of 2024. So on my to-do list is reaching out to the county commissioners and some council members' offices and working towards obtaining long-term funding for this grant. The projects we do and the stories we tell with this funding are really going to be um, kind of a good way for us to advocate for the funding. Oops. So the kind of purpose and spirit of this grant is to strengthen the local food supply chain, which means increasing food crop production, processing, and distribution via sales or donation by local urban farmers. Um, we want to accelerate the ability of local growers to scale up their operations so that they can get to kind of the next level. And then we want to ensure support for socially disadvantaged farmers. What we mean by that is BIPOC folks, women, low-income growers, anybody who's marginalized. This grant is specifically for critical infrastructure. So I have a whole entire laundry list of what that term means, but we're thinking water connections, water lines, cold storage, refrigeration units, like that stuff like that, high tunnels, market carts, like a significant number of raised beds. There's a lot of things that can be um, funded with this grant. Um, so this year we have $285,000 available for local growers, which is significantly more than last year. Last year we had 15,000 or 150,000, excuse me. Um, each organization is able to apply for up to $15,000. And if you are doing a water line installation project, you can apply for up to $20,000. I think that might be a little bit confusing for people. It's a little confusing for me. I'm not 100% sure how to make it not confusing, but the thought process there was last year, after getting quotes from people on things like refrigeration units, or water lines and stuff like that, while $15,000 is a significant amount of money, some of those things actually went beyond that. So we were able to advocate to the county, to kind of bump up the cap a little bit. Um, so if you are an awarded grantee for this program, you will also be provided technical support throughout the project. So that will either come from us at Franklin Soil and Water, which, if any of you are familiar with us, we do a lot of that. Madison is constantly going out to people's houses to look at, drainage concerns or rain gardens and things like that. Um, we'll also be able to offer support and technical assistance from OSU Extension. Some of you may know Tim McDermott. He is very sharp and knows a lot of things. And then NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which um, Franklin Soil and Water works very closely with, and we have really awesome conservationists for the county. So both of them have definitely been great to kind of lean on for technical support throughout the process. For eligibility, this is intended for small for-profit or nonprofit urban farms, community gardens, or other organizations within Franklin County. Um, growing operations need to be 5 acres or smaller, and some slight additional consideration will be given to operations that are under 1 acre. Um, from what I've seen, the 5 acre thing is not a problem, but some of the thought process behind that is there are different regulations and requirements that kind of come into play when an agricultural operation is above 5 acres. So that's why that's there. Um, one application may be submitted per organization. Um, eligible uses are, like I said earlier, any sort of critical infrastructure that will help the farm or garden scale up their production or increase operational efficiency. Um, grant funding cannot be used for cultivation or distribution of invasive plants or illicit substances or plants. Um, and kind of like I said earlier, you may apply for up to $15,000 for your organization and then 20,000 if you're installing a water line. In terms of eligible infrastructure, if you go to our website, under our Urban Ag Grant page, there should be frequently asked questions, eligibility things. There's a bunch of documents there. I'm more than happy to go over some of those once we get through this presentation. Um, kind of one of the guiding principles that I try to hold myself to for this grant is flexibility. Thank you, Madison. I'm not an urban farmer. I've had a garden in my yard since before I knew what a tomato was, but I know that you guys know what you need the most. So there are things that we just cannot fund with federal funding. Um, so off the top of my head, liability insurance, salaries, vehicles, stuff like that. Like there are things that we just can't fund as a government agency, and there are things we can't fund with federal funding. But if you're not sure about whether or not something's eligible, give us a call. And most of the time, if you can explain it to me, I'm like, that sounds good. So, um, for the application, some of you may have already seen it, may have already been online. This is via Survey 123. It is quite a few questions. Part of that is just wanting to kind of do some of that work up front in terms of the tax stuff we have to collect from you guys. The questions are posted online in a PDF form, so you're welcome to open that up and look at the application questions before you actually go through and apply for it. Your responses will be saved within your browser via cookies, so you can exit the site and then come back to it. If you have any issues with that, it's probably having something to do with cookie settings, so I would check on that first. We do typically ask for a state of Ohio business license, proof of 501c3, or proof of a fiscal sponsor. I just got a question today about whether you could be a 501c4 as your fiscal sponsor. We think that's all right, but that's one of those things where we do have to check with the county and stuff like that. If you lease your land, you will need to provide a letter from the landowner, just confirming that you have permission to complete the requested project. For a budget, so there's also a budget template on the website. You can use whatever you like. I don't really care what it looks like, but I wanted to give people kind of just an example. So one of the things that we do really want to drive home is we want applications to include a well thought out, detailed, and accurate budget, and we will consider that when scoring applications. That does not mean that you have to have everything figured out, but I would really recommend trying to get quotes, just pulling stuff up online, things like that. Some of my lessons learned from the first time around, I know your quotes are going to change. I know your budget's going to change. I'm not going to hold you exactly to all of these numbers, but I would recommend just doing some work on the front end, because that also kind of signals to you like, okay, how much is this project actually going to cost and how feasible is it? And then most people's budgets will include a lot more than this. Again, this is just an example. I would ask that you double check all of your formulas on Excel if you were using this template to make sure that it's adding up correctly. I don't want people to miss out on funding because I don't catch that something's not adding up correctly. And like I said earlier, you're welcome to use any format you want, but I did want to make sure people had a template so they had somewhere to start from. For scoring and grant review, so we open the application on January 3rd, and then it will close at the end of the month, and we hope to make awards by February 14th. Another thing that we kind of heard last year was we are aware that this grant timeline doesn't 100% line up with growing seasons. Most people are doing their planning kind of after the fall harvest and over the winter. So we did try to move the award date back a couple weeks. Some of that is kind of just when we get funding allocated by the Franklin County Commissioners. Some of it might not be able to change, but that is something that I am keeping in the back of my head. Grants are reviewed by a grant advisory committee that will include people from OSU Extension, Franklin Soil and Water, Franklin County, and then the City of Columbus. We also have a scoring rubric on the website that just kind of goes through the things that we're looking for when we're scoring these applications. Again, like I said earlier, we want these applications to be complete. I want to kind of be able to see that you have thought this project out. Provide all required documents. If you have issues getting something, just reach out to us. Like I said, we can be very flexible. But please provide answers to all the questions that are asked. If we are getting applications and stuff that just very clearly didn't read any of the eligibility requirements and stuff like that, didn't follow directions, didn't answer anything, those probably aren't going to score very well. Sorry, this is a little small. So scoring and grant review. A lot of these things are taken straight from our contract with the county and kind of the grant documents from them. So strengthening the local food supply, scaling up and increasing food crop production, processing, and distribution, increasing operational efficiency, encouraging support for socially disadvantaged communities, and then having a positive environmental impact and connection to the Franklin Soil and Water Mission. We understand that this is very different from some of our grant programs where we're funding rain gardens and stormwater stuff and native plants. But if you do have an opportunity to work some of that in there, I would definitely recommend that. Applications should include a well thought out, detailed, and accurate budget. And then methods for sustainability beyond the grant cycle. This grant is sort of intended for well-established operations. If you are wanting to start a community garden with these funds, this probably isn't the one for you. This is more for like scaling up existing operations. And you know, we're not going to hold you to that, but we want to see that you do have kind of other funding sources, other grants, things like that to sustain your organization long term. So members of the Grant Advisory Committee will score each project based on the criteria above, and projects will be ranked based off of those scores. Some additional consideration will be given to socially disadvantaged farmers and/or organizations, and then to growing operations that are 1 acre or smaller. And then I did include this earlier, or I did include this year for 2025. Now I'm realizing an error on my slides. So additional consideration will be given to the two things I just mentioned, and then to organizations who did not receive the Urban Ag Grant in 2024. I have since been told that usually when people say that, it's just a polite way of saying that you're not going to get it if you apply a second time. That is definitely not the intention there. If we have like two applications that score exactly the same, they're very similar projects, they're both really well written, and one person received the grant last year and one person didn't, that's when that would come into play. But when we talk about additional consideration, we're talking about 1 or 2 points on a scale of like 25. So this is not something that will like push one grant application over another. But again, we want to be mindful about, you know, being equitable with the way we fund grants, and then with making sure that we spread the money around the county as well. Question and discussion time. If we don't have immediate answers to your question, we'll take note of them and we'll follow up. All of the questions that I've been asked via email, phone call, or in this meeting will be compiled into a document and posted on our website. We already have something on there, and I will update it with the questions asked in this info session. And then I've definitely been getting calls and emails and stuff like that from folks, so I'll try to include some of those too. If you have a question, there's likely someone else in this virtual room that has it as well, so please don't be afraid to speak up. If a question comes up later, you're welcome to call our office. You can fill out a contact form on our website or review our frequently asked documents. Thank you again. Here is our office phone number, and then a link to our contact form on the website. That's just an easy way for us to track tickets as if they were work orders and stuff like that. And then here's a link to the web page. Like I mentioned earlier, this is being recorded, so it will be posted on YouTube, and then I'll put a link on our Urban Ag Grant page. So now that I've gotten through all my slides, does anybody have any immediate questions right now? Are there any in the chat? Yeah, Kamal.
Thank you, Annabelle. I have a question, a couple of questions that was asked in here while I was working on it. So thought of coming up here and ask that questions. First of all, the format, as you already mentioned, is designed or designated towards 15K.
Mhm.
Um, whenever I try to, I mean, I'm working on this, garden expansion at one of our garden sites, and we are interested in installing a water line, right?
Mhm.
So, how should I submit this on that specific question? How much grant funding are you requesting? If I have to put more than 15K, just like shows kind of like red flag. Should I still submit it that way, or how does that work?
Let me, I will check on the like kind of background stuff in the application, but you should be able to put whatever number you want in there. I don't think
Okay,
there's a maximum, but I didn't actually think to check that, so
right. Yeah,
I
it's just
will.
the answer must be between 0 to 1,500 or 15,000. And
Oh,
I was
okay.
like,
Yes, I
oh,
will make
okay,
sure that's
I cannot.
edited.
Yeah, so I cannot answer that.
Okay.
Anyways, that was the question, and another is about on this. This is really very simple way of filling out the questionnaire or the grant, right? But there should be one page where we would write our justifications or all the instead of all the questions here, maybe on one pager where we can upload our like why and what and all that kind
Okay.
of thing. That'll be really good to have, I guess, so that you and the staff would have a chance to read it, because I didn't feel like, oh, so where should I write all these explanations about what
Mhm.
we are doing.
Yeah.
So that'll be
Um,
really good. But anyways, how should we submit that thing, like a proposal kind of way, so that you have a chance to read it through? And I know it means a lot. Like you should be getting a lot of application.
mhm.
Yeah.
So as you go through the application on ArcGIS Online, um, more questions will show up. So if there are questions that you see on like the application questions that aren't showing up yet, it's kind of one of those like there are required questions, and as you answer those, more will show up. What I can do probably is I can probably add a section for someone to upload like just an additional document if they have anything else. I was actually thinking about that today, so I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Annabelle.
No problem.
There's one more last question from my end. Sorry, I'm talking
No, you're
too
good.
much. So there's this question about what is the total acreage of land in production that is being operated by your organization? And
Hmm.
another question followed by it is what is the total acreage of land in production at the property or properties for which you are requesting funding? So doesn't this ask the same questions or kind of
So
confusing yourself?
those were definitely questions that when we were writing the application, we went back and forth about a lot with wording. The first one is for organizations that have multiple plots of land. They might be operating like 3 acres of growing space, but the property that they are applying for might only be a half acre. So that's kind of where those two questions vary.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
We were talking in our staff meeting and I was bringing this up and we were all confused of like, oh, maybe this question is talking about general all of our garden sites and the second question is talking about this, but we were like, yeah, this is a questions to ask, but thanks for the
Yes.
clarification.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Any other questions? I think we might have had one in the chat,
There was a
Madison.
question in the chat. Can fruiting plants such as raspberries be included in the pollinator plants?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I don't think I really have a preference there. I think our intent was with pollinator plants. If you look at, again, I know the um or the budget is very small. Our intent was
If
including
if
pollinator.
somebody wants raspberry plants, please come get them from me. That's all I've got to say. I'm getting ready
um,
to send them out, and they need homes.
Wonderful. Um, for the pollinator plants specifically, I think we were thinking about just native plants and stuff like that. So we have gotten, I guess, applications in the past that want to include stuff that maybe is not native. Franklin Soil and Water works a ton with native plants and invasive plants, and we have people like Madison who know a ton about those. So with stuff like that, we will go through and kind of have to make a case by case basis. If you put in a calorie pear tree, we are absolutely not funding that because it is illegal and extremely invasive. But if it's like a marigold, yes, that's fine. It's not native, but it works.
I have a question related to calorie pear. If
Yeah.
we want to remove a calorie pear, can that be funded?
Yes. If that's a part of like clearing additional space and stuff for more beds. I think I did see Miss Ava on here last year, or on this meeting, but yeah, she got the grant last year and put in money for tree removal, and I was like, huh, what's that for? And then we went out to the site and I was like, oh, this is all calorie pear. Yeah, like cut that down. That can be funded.
Yes, that is correct.
Good. We have one right in the middle of our whole space.
Yes. But yes, if you want to include something like that, that would be eligible for funding. And like I said earlier, if there's anything we have questions on in applications and in budgets and stuff, we discuss as a grant advisory team, a lot of people who know a lot more than I do, and we'll follow up and stuff with kind of applicants that are in the running. If we have questions about your application, we'll ask those. Anybody else? Kate?
Yeah, hi. I know that last year it was determined that funds couldn't be used for trailer or vehicle purchase or rental. I don't know how tied this is to which parts of federal funding, but I know that there were updates on the USDA rural development side about relaxing some of the restrictions around those areas. Do you know of anything that is changing with the ARPA funding?
I don't know off the top of my head about any changes with ARPA funding specifically. I think and some of these I may have to end up consulting with the county about, because again, it's their funding. I think we did determine last year that trailers would be an eligible expense. I think it's just the vehicles, like vehicle purchases, that we cannot do with this grant. And then did you ask about vehicle rental too?
Yeah, rental or purchase for trailers or vehicles. So I thought that trailers were deemed ineligible last year. So that was one
Okay.
that we kind of went around about because it was
Yeah.
something that could have been useful for us.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I think maybe it either was deemed ineligible or like the county had some sort of issue with it. I will check again. I know there's about 2 weeks until the application is due, so I will try to check on that quickly.
Okay, yeah, I just learned about the rural development changes last week. You said something about a market cart. What does that mean?
I was actually referencing the carts that you guys bought.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay, Kate's here. What's a good example? For everybody else, Forage and Sown purchased some kind of those rolling steel carts last year, and if you go to the Clintonville Farmers Market, you may have seen them, and that was one of those things where I was like, I'm not really sure how this fits in, and then it made a huge impact on their organization. So that's kind of what I envisioned with that. So yeah.
Cool.
All right, it sounds like people are getting some free raspberries from Maggie. Does anybody else looks like Alicia's typing,
I have a question for Kate later on because I do a plant sale too, but it's not appropriate for this situation. So Kate, I might like find your email address or phone number or whatever online and ask you just about those carts and whether or not you use them after like the plant growing season and stuff like that.
Sure, yeah, feel free, email me. We have a contact form on our website, but we're easy to find.
And so we do have about half an hour left in our info session. So again, I don't want to put people on the spot, but we do have some people in the crowd who were awarded this funding last year. So honestly, Maggie, if you guys do want to have a quick conversation about growing carts, that's perfectly fine by me.
Go for it.
Okay, yeah, I just want to take up anybody's time with like one-on-ones. Yeah, so essentially, yeah, I do a plant sale. I do the Gahanna Herb Day plant sale every spring. And I saw those carts and I was like, ooh,
Yeah.
that could solve a lot of problems for me. But then I thought, well, I wouldn't really use them, and except for during that time period, during the early spring for the plant sale. Did you folks end up using them?
That was the primary time that we used them. Yeah.
Okay.
After seedling season, we shift a lot of our production out to the country, and they're not helpful out there.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know then. All right. I was just, yeah, thinking about it and trying to like justify whether or not it was like something I would want to invest in, or if I was just willing to slug it through for those like first couple of months and just do it.
I
do it
can
the-
say that having had them, I would say the number of labor hours that they relieve would make them worth a purchase, even if you couldn't grant fund them.
Gotcha.
You
Okay.
do have to be careful about the size of vehicle that they can fit into. In the back of the U-Haul, we did have to angle grind about a foot off of the top of each of the uprights of the ones that we
Nice.
chose.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. I mean, Annabelle, I have another question too that's more of a specific Feed Me Tomatoes question. So we are located in Gahanna in Franklin County, but we do have property like right on the other side of Pataskala. The grant funding that we'd be asking for is primarily for refrigeration and critical infrastructure like that. Our wash and pack is here in Franklin County. Does the fact that part of our growing operation is honestly on free land, which nobody can pass up, right? Outside of Franklin County, would that impact our eligibility?
No. So because this is Franklin County funding, the funds have to be used. Like if you're installing a water line, it needs to be in Franklin County. I'm
Okay.
not going to track down Kate and make sure that the carts aren't out of the county, but like the funding needs to be used within the county.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so everything that we want to do project-wise would be inside Franklin County, and that's what matters.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yes.
That's all my questions.
All right, anybody else? Let's see.
There was another question in the chat. Will this grant cover fencing and security cameras?
So fencing, definitely. Security cameras and kind of big technology purchases like that, I think the grant advisory committee always struggles with. Because some of that, I think, kind of falls into that realm of things that should excuse me. Some of that falls into the realm of things that sort of fall under like business expenses and stuff like that. So, like I said, it never hurts to ask. It never hurts to make an argument for yourself and advocate for what you need as a garden. But in the past, things like VR sets for education and then like a printer and a computer haven't been funded for some of those reasons. So fencing, definitely. Security cameras, make a case for it and we'll talk about it. And then Jill said, I would love to hear what projects some of the last year's recipients did if we have time. Kate, Sean, and Ava, if you guys want to share, you are more than welcome to. Otherwise, I can also go over the people who were awarded last year and potentially even the final report from last year so you guys can see a little bit of the impact. So Kate, Sean, and Ava, you're welcome to present if you'd like. Oh, and then Kamal's organization, Bhutanese Community of Central Ohio, also was awarded last year.
Yes, this is Ava Johnson. I'll go first. Yeah, I'm so appreciative of this funding. I had a lease at a property that I leased from a church. I had the lease for 2 years. The property has a high water table, so I wasn't exactly sure how to work with it. So this grant came at a perfect time. Again, I had the lease for 2 years. I had done a lot of research, talked to a lot of other farmers, and just trying to figure out what I was going to do with the land. So with this urban infrastructure grant, I was able to hire a contractor. They created some berms to divert the water. And then we were able to put in at least 21 in-ground beds and 15 raised beds. I'm still working on the water situation. The church allowed me to use their water as long as I paid them. And we got a late start, but it's a good test, to get ready for the spring. So I'm very appreciative, and this is a great grant to have. So, yeah, I wish everyone luck as far as applying for the grant and getting the funding. And I'm located at 3919 Bryce Road. You're welcome to drive out there and look at it. Um, we're on about 3,000 square feet, more than that, but only 3,000 square feet as far as farming. It's at the Dayspring Nazarene Church in Franklin County.
Hello, everyone. My name's Sean McKay, and I'm the president of the Garden District Corporation. Last year, we were able to order, I think it was like 47 raised beds, and with that, there was a lot of nuts and bolts with that. But with that, we were able to increase our production by 40%. So that was really awesome. And we produced $22,000 worth of produce that went into our food pantry agency. We partner with LSS Food Pantry, and then we also sold at some farmers markets as well, and we sold $1,800. So it made a big difference for us.
And one of my farm partners is in here or was in here, so she can jump in if she wants to. We primarily focused on improvements to seedling greenhouses. We replaced plastic that was due to be replaced. We also got some frost blanket to expand the seedling area outside of the greenhouses for hardier plants, but we do a lot of spring seedlings, and a big problem for us was transporting them. Because we were hand loading into and out of crates thousands and thousands of seedlings every weekend to two different markets, to one market. So this allowed us to convert our process onto rolling carts, load them from the greenhouse, roll them into the back of a U-Haul at another market to our Saturdays. And that also freed up a lot of labor hours, just so many labor hours. We also got hose trolleys for our greenhouses, which we had limped along without for years because we are using greenhouses in a neighborhood backyard on my personal property. And so that resulted in a lot less loss of plants being tipped over by hoses being drug around greenhouses, and converted an old chicken coop structure into an additional greenhouse space. I think that about covers it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things about Foraged and Sown's project too was it felt like a lot of little things that really added up and some maintenance. So you guys can come at this as some like Kate said, things you've been limping along, maintenance that really needs to be done, or you can come at this with kind of new, bigger infrastructure investments. And then some other projects, I'm going to maybe try to share a different screen real quick. Oh, we'll see.
I think right around the corner from us at the church, because I'm in the Linden neighborhood, did they get one and they put up a high tunnel at Mays Manor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I do have an end of year report here. This was more for the county and the local food board and stuff like that. But it does have some good pictures in here of what people did and the awarded applicants. So Harriet Gardens, which is also in the same area as Kate and Mays Manor, purchased a electric tiller. And then they also purchased like a barrel washer, a salad spinner, and a high tunnel. They were able to fit all of that into their budget. This is the Mays Manor high tunnel that Kate is referencing. So that did come from our funding. Faces, which is the family and I don't know if I remember what the acronym stands for. I apologize. But they put in a bunch of raised beds, kind of within a greenhouse that already existed. Here's a picture of Ava's property. You can see the in-ground beds, raised beds, some cisterns, and then there is some stormwater kind of swales diversion at the bottom here too. So, and that was one project where Ava was like, I have these wet spots. And then myself and a coworker, Dave Reuter, went out there and were able to kind of provide her and her contractor some assistance on kind of her drainage issues. So here's some of the Urban Ag Grant recipients from last year. Good News Community of Central Ohio, which Kamal is with. He's on this call right now. They expanded their garden beds, which those are over on Carl Road, I believe. They're in-ground beds, but so they did that, and then they put in deer fencing and stuff like that. The Broad Street Presbyterian Church, they put in a really, really big water cistern and then used some of the funding for a base for that as well. The Charles Madison Neighbor Memorial Garden was actually a project that was not able to be finished due to just some issues with landowners and kind of deciding where to put things in. Here it is, Family, Adolescent, and Child Community Engagement Service. They did some raised beds and things like that. Foraged and Sown, which Kate got to talk about. Franklinton Farms ended up doing some more kind of emergency work. So they actually put a new roof on and did some sewer work. And then Freshtown Farms did a bunch of irrigation and pumps and stuff to help them get better access to water. Garden District Corporation, Sean already talked about that. Growing Hearts and Hands, which is on the east side on Oak Street, they put in a water line and some irrigation systems as well. Harriet Gardens, I touched on earlier, they got more produce processing equipment. Mays Manor got a high tunnel. Southeast Urban Farm we talked about. And then Three Creeks Produce actually bought a refrigerated like shipping container, which was pretty cool. This is a little bit about kind of what happened last year. We had $150,000 worth of grant funds available, and we got over $500,000 of grant requests, which was wild. So we did not expect to have that sort of interest in the first year, but it definitely shows like a need in the community. Some of the challenges we had, again, the time frame doesn't line up perfectly with the growing season. We know that. Hopefully the 2 weeks will mean something this year. Changes in budget we talked about too. Again, I'm not going to hold you exactly to all the numbers you put in your budget. And then project location permission from landowner I kind of touched on a little bit. And then here are some additional photos of people's things. So Growing Hearts and Hands, Franklinton Farms, Garden District Corporation, Harriet Gardens, and then Foraged and Sown. Does anybody have any other questions?
Shoot.
I hear Aaron Hopkins, Minister Aaron talking.
Oh gosh, I don't know where to get back in here at.
Oh, we
I
can
was
hear
trying
you.
to. Okay. And so I'm sorry for coming on late.
Yeah,
Um,
perfectly fine.
And so I did have some questions, and you just kind of spoke about one of them is a question about the homeowner or the agreement with the property owner. What does that actually have to look like? Is that just the lease, or do I have to have something specifically for the project?
So we don't need a lease, we'll just need a like letter. Just stating that you can do the project and that they understand the timeline. And then, so part of our reason for asking for that obviously is we want to make sure that the person you're leasing land from knows that you're planning on doing this. And then, our hope is that this infrastructure is in place in a long time, for a long time. You hear about um, kind of the time that Foraged and Sown saved and just the increase that Sean had and some other stuff like that. And those are just within the first year. So if we have places where you do have leases and you're sure it'll be around for a long time, that just gives us a little bit insurance on that. So there are no requirements for like how long something needs to be installed, but that's our hope with the grant.
I was able to do that. I think I just had a letter from my personal self to the business because I personally own our land and the business doesn't. And did that just like, I think I got the bank to notarize a paper that I signed to myself.
Yes, and it can, most of what we've seen is just letters. I don't think I have anything drafted up. But if you want, I can send you an email just with like what we're expecting to see.
Other question?
Yeah.
And it's around, I didn't hear all of the qualifying things. And one thing that we're really looking to do is to get our marketing and distribution of our products. And so, things I wanted to know if they were allowable, like just packaging, anything for packaging. We want to increase our, CSA and, our presence at farmers market and at our farm stand. Like for technology, anything for internet. Internet to be able to run a laptop, tracking data. We've got a microgreen operation there that we want to be able to put in all our data about when our yields and stuff can be ready.
So you were breaking up a little bit, but I heard, I think, packaging and then technology were the two things you're asking about.
Yes.
Okay. Packaging, I think we have funded things like little seedling pots and stuff like that. So I think that would be an eligible funding or an eligible item for technology. I think that is something I talked about this a little bit earlier. I think that's something the grant advisory committee has struggled with a little bit as infrastructure, but I also can see the other side of how that is infrastructure. It's technology infrastructure. It may not be a water line. And kind of like I said earlier, just make an argument for it, and we can have those conversations for sure.
And so when you say make an argument for it, and so I would need to have that conversation before the 31st.
I mean, I think when I say make an argument for it, I mean just if you can justify costs in your grant application really well, then that helps with things like that.
Okay, yeah, because we want to make sure that we're asking for the right things. I'd hate to ask for something that if it's not going to be funded, that I really consider the things that we do. Try to be real selective.
Yeah. And so there is also I think earlier in the slides, I have a short list of the things that could be eligible for critical infrastructure. And then on the website, there's a much more comprehensive list in one of the frequently asked questions documents. So there's definitely a lot more on the website, which I think Madison put in the chat earlier. And you can access that just through Franklin Soil and Water's main webpage. Minister Aaron, if you don't have anything else, I'll open it up for other questions. Does anybody have anything last minute? All right. I think on my end, I can talk about the sort of technical things of what you can ask for and stuff like that. I've mentioned sort of guiding principles a couple times. I think that's the biggest thing that has made this a successful program, is having things that I keep myself to through this grant process. And some of this is from feedback from grantees too. So kind of the things that I hope to do throughout this process to make it successful for all of us is maintaining open lines of communication. So if you are awarded, you'll have my cell number. You can call me whenever you have a question, shoot me an email, whatever. Providing equitable support and being aware of people's limitations. There are definitely grantees who I just didn't really hear from much other than our monthly check-ins, and they kind of just went and ran with it. And then there are people who need a little bit more assistance or need me to look at stormwater and stuff like that. We're here for all of that. And then again, this is a little bit beyond the realm of what Soil and Water, what Franklin Soil and Water normally does, but we'll try to encourage you a little bit to consider conservation practices along with your infrastructure improvements. Looking forward and for some additional resources that we provide, in 2025, we got a National Association of Conservation District grant. So we will be providing some no-cost technical assistance and education. We'll be doing some free soil tests. We'll be doing some free good agricultural practices training. And then we'll be doing 2 soil health workshops, one in like March and then one in May. And you can find the link to that on our website. I might actually pull that up, Madison, because I don't know if I've actually told you where it is at this point. But we do have a new agricultural resources page that has the information on those resources, and then has some other agricultural resources. Miss Ava asked about whether or not we're selling native plants this spring. We are actually. Madison and I have taken over our tree sale. That's what she's referring to. So you got the right people in the room. Our sale is open right now and you can order until March 23rd. And our sort of theme this year was bringing color and beauty into your backyard. So it's, Maddie, it's very like colorful and then interesting shapes and flowers and nuts and stuff like that. Yes, and we are selling out of things already. It's an edible year, so we have fruit trees and then we have blueberries. The blueberries are selling pretty well, so I will just say that. But with that, we've got about 5 minutes left. I will leave it open again for questions. Uh-oh. But yeah, if anybody has any questions specifically on the urban agriculture grant, you're welcome to ask them now, or you can put in a contact form on our website, which I'll drop in there again. Like I mentioned earlier, this will be recorded and then posted on our website and our YouTube channel. So if you know anybody who wasn't able to make it tonight, again, I know I didn't, Ava, I know I didn't provide a ton of notice on this. There will be a link to it later. So with that, if anybody doesn't have anything else, I will let you all go and enjoy your evenings. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
See ya. The blueberries were a hit, Madison.
I know they were in stock as of yesterday. I know we were running pretty low, but I did not know that they sold out. So
Yeah, we'll have to check on that.
good to know.
All right. Sweet. I am, do you need to end the